Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the Art Business Podcast. My name's David Bellingham, and I'm Programme Director of the Master's Degree in Art Business at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. And my guest today is Selasie Gomado, who
Yes,
is the co. Welcome, Selasie.
thank you so much, David. It's a pleasure
Uh,
to be here.
And Selassie is actually speaking from Ghana, and he's just told me that the temperature there is like twice as much as it is in London, although it feels relatively mild in London. So we slightly wish for a change of to swap in locations. Anyway, Selassie is co-founder and creative director of Artemartis, and which is an art agency based in Accra in Ghana, which supports emerging artists both locally and internationally. Most recently, they had a stand at London's 154 Premier African Art Fair in Somerset House in London, beautifully positioned by the river. One of my current MA Art Business students, a new student, Chantel Thompson, DM'd me the morning when I'd insted that I had a ticket to go to 154 and gave me a tip to check out Selassie's Artemartis as, quote, an artist collective from Ghana with no gallery rep. So, Selassie, you're very welcome. So, can we begin by asking you how you first became aware of art as a child? Were you brought up surrounded by art or not at all?
So to be very honest, I wasn't really surrounded by art until I got into high school. Um, I, I mean, I used to draw a lot and sketch a lot as a child. Um, and then when I got into high school, I found myself surrounded by a lot of visual art students. Even though I studied science in high school, majority of my friends were visual art students. I just fell in love with the whole process of creating something from nothing. And I remember I used to run away from my classroom to the visual arts class and spend the entire day there. It was really beautiful. Yeah, so that was the beginning of everything. Yeah,
So it's just a personal urge, really.
exactly. I
To
just
to
felt
Yeah. But do you remember becoming aware that there was this strange thing, if you like, that wasn't like reality, but that we called art? Were you aware of what that was? I mean, because we still try to define what we mean by art, but I just wonder whether there was a moment when or when you became aware that there was such a thing, or did you just want to create?
I wanted to create, honestly. When I found myself around these people, I started thinking a lot about what I was doing in school and how I wanted to be a creative in the future. And I found myself just loving anything related to art, to be very honest with you. I found myself doing engineering later on, but I chose engineering because I was very aware that it was one of the few programs that would still allow you to create things. So yes, that's where I was. Yeah, exactly. That's where I started.
So would you say that there's still quite a lot of pressure? Certainly in the world I've grown up with, the school system in the UK, there's still, even now, there's still quite a lot of subconscious pressure, if you like, for boys to go into the sciences and do things like engineering and girls to go into art. But obviously that is being gradually worn away, thank God. But did you kind of so basically it sounds as though you had carer, parental or peer group pressure to do engineering, but you thought I'll choose that because at least it's actually like a Meccano set that we had when we were kids, you know.
I was actually given two options, either study medicine or engineering, and I
Medicine
decided to
or
do engineering. The pressure is still there. It's still there. But as you said, it's changing quite a lot now because I feel like for our parents, they pressured us to do those courses because they saw results. They saw how it would be like if someone actually decided to choose this course and become a professional in that field. Now we have artists who are actually doing so much than before. And due to social media and the internet, our parents or our generation is seeing differently and they are urging their children to go into the arts more. So it's progressing. Yeah.
I think so. And yeah, people begin to see that you can make a living in the arts. It's very difficult, as you know, to make a living out of just doing art. Most artists are teaching or whatever, or they're forced to kind of commercialize their work with multiple editions, etc., etc. We see a lot of that now. I guess the course that I run is interesting on that level because it's got the word art and business in the title. It's got that kind of oppositional element in it, which I think attracts a lot of people to our course whose parents are maybe fed up with paying for their education, and they say, "I'm not going to pay for you to do any more art." So they say, "Oh, there's this thing called art business, you know," and it so obviously that combines those two different worlds. But maybe you could say something about your what facilitated your, I think you described yourself as a co-founder, so maybe there were other people involved of this art group called Artemartis. I think you founded it in Accra, where you are now in Ghana in 2019.
So it was in 2018.
Oh, 2018. Apologies. Yeah.
I founded Artemartis right after university. I think it was 6 months after. I found myself jotting down multiple ideas. I mean, every young person after school, you try to figure out what you want to do with your life. And after starting my first job, which was right after school, I had a very random thought about how we have artworks being sold for high amounts of money, and we have artists who are being celebrated and who are moving, pushing boundaries. And I had a conversation with myself, and I saw where I was and how I wanted to be an artist. And thankfully, I grew up in a family that is very business oriented.
Mm.
It's mostly either you are an engineer of some sort or you are into business. So I feel like that's also helped me with coming up with an idea, because my family supports businesses. They are really encouraging. And then Artemartis started as an online art shop in 2018, and then it's evolved into what it is today.
And I guess starting in 2018 as an online art shop meant that COVID was arguably quite positive for you because you were already there in the virtual world.
Yeah, 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 it
Yeah.
was. It was.
I'm fascinated by the name because I studied Latin of all things with classical art and archaeology when I at university and did my PhD on ancient Pompeian wall painting. It's a long way from art business, maybe. But artem artis sounds quite Latin. It sounds something like art of art, or,
Yeah.
if I had to
So
translate.
when it all started, it took me a month to come up with a name.
Mm,
Uh, I was at work and I was just thinking of a random name, and I saw the word Artem and it means art. I was like, okay,
mm.
what else can I add to this? And I just thought of artists and I just took out the T. So it's just Artemartis. Quite simple, nothing much to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just almost like a poetic happening in your subconscious that the name sounded great.
That's
As I say, to me, I love the name. It's very easy for me to remember because it's the accusative case of art. Ars is Latin for art. We get our word obviously from that. And artem is the accusative, and artist, it means of the art. So it's like almost like art of the art, which is quite nice. Maybe you didn't even realize that, but it's there. Um, so, so as I say, my Chantel, my student, described you as an artist collective from Ghana with no gallery rep. So maybe you could tell us what that means. Why not, you don't have a gallery rep.
so
Maybe it's not true.
oh, it is actually. None of our artists are officially signed with any gallery yet.
I see.
We present all our artists and we collaborate with galleries and other art spaces to push our artists basically.
Mm.
So we define ourselves as both a collective and an agency. So the collective deals with the growth of the artists, investing in their careers, their practices, getting to know them one-on-one, working on character development and all of that. And then it also involves the artists learning from each other. The agency mostly deals with the business side of things, where we actually go out there to find opportunities and sell their works and then try to get some money from what they are doing. Yeah.
And did you have some seed money when you started in 2018?
No, it was most of my funding was from my old job. I funded basically everything from pockets. It used to piss my mom off a lot, but I basically explained to her that I'm just trying to create something. I see a vision, so she should just understand. And she did. So it's mostly been from pockets.
So do you think having business-minded parents and family, that do you think that maybe you did grow up with that possibility of being an entrepreneur and investing your own earned hard-earned cash into something you loved?
Yeah, I think it helps because you, as a child, I got to see a lot of failures from my family. You
Hmm.
know, you see them go into a business, it fails, they
Mm.
get back right up, and then they go and push on again. It made me push myself as well. I remember in school, especially in basic school, I started doing my own businesses as young as 10 years old by doing assignments for my classmates and then charging them money for it. I mean, it was yeah, it was a lot. And even in high school, I remember my school was about 3 hours away from home, and I used to organize bus trips during vacation days. So I'll collect money from a lot of students, go to the bus station, talk to the drivers, and then negotiate a deal with them, and then bring everyone back home. I used to
Ah,
sell a lot of things in university,
yeah.
and it just every opportunity I find to make something, I just jump on it. Yeah, so I think all of that has helped me in building Artemartis towards this today.
Actually, that's quite a trope in like Netflix series, isn't it? Person who
Honestly,
the person who makes money by writing the homework for the assignment for another student. I think it was in Suits, if you remember that.
yes,
Basically,
I think it was Suits. Yeah, it was Suits.
Stammer's
Suits.
been taken by someone else, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it shows sort of entrepreneurial character, which is wonderful and something we try and instill in our students. But it's quite hard on being, I personally I believe that it's quite hard to teach someone to be an entrepreneur. It seems to be either you've got it or you haven't. I mean, you can obviously draw it out and educate it out, but I don't know. It seems to be something that's either you've got or you haven't.
I feel like it's a calling, honestly. If Please don't try it because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
But it sounds like you're so when you think of the other artists that you're working with in Artemartis, do they look to you as the business minded one? Are they all quite entrepreneurial like yourself?
I think it's the former. They look to me as the business mind of things. We have an understanding, and the great thing about them is they are full of ideas. So sometimes they call me and we talk about how to go about things, and it's like a beehive. We all coordinate together. It's really beautiful.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that metaphor. It's fantastic. I've just come back from Kew Gardens actually, and they have this wonderful, contemporary, almost like a work of art structure in the gardens, and it has microphones that pick up the noises of the bees in their beehives, so you can actually hear when they're being very, very productive, and sometimes they're more lazy in winter. And there's also like there's like a light show and a musical soundtrack, digital musical soundtrack that goes along with it. I'm sorry, I just can't remember the name of the artist or architect involved, but it's a very beautiful idea, I think, of bees working for the good of one another. I think it's lovely. So the I was going to ask you, is there a physical gallery called Artemartis? If I came to Accra, could I visit you in a like a bricks and mortar space?
Yes, we do have a physical space, but it's not a gallery, it's a studio space.
Okay.
So this place just allows all the artists to practice freely. It's a rented it's a rented house, and our artists just come there to practice. Even if they want to sleep, whatever they want to do, they have the freedom to explore and create. Yes, we've had the space for almost 3 years now. So
And talking about the other artists and it sounds almost like a kind of commune idea, the studio space. Do you turn anyone away? Do you have criteria for who can and can't come in, or do you try and be as inclusive as possible? Because you must have lots of us aspiring artists that you're not quite certain whether they're gonna, whether their stuff is good. I mean, how do you handle that sort of ethical problem?
yeah, so Currently, I mean, since I met these artists, I've decided to work with all of them long term. And it's been difficult to say no to a lot of artists, but I try my best to put them on opportunities whenever I find them. But the artists I'm working with currently are long term, and I have an agreement with them to work long term. And I
Hmm.
know myself, I will never take more than I can handle. And this
Mm.
is what I can handle. I'm aware of my capacity and capability. So until I complete what I'm supposed to do with these artists, which is move them from emerging to established artists,
Mhm.
I the possibility of me taking on new artists is very low. Though if I find any talent that is worth it, I will definitely go for it. Yeah. I have
Yeah,
a few in mind. Yeah.
yeah. That's quite difficult because I suppose you're slightly limited, A, by your own capabilities and the fact you're doing your own work, but B, by the actual physical space, how many people could actually fit into those spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's it. Is it open to the public? Can people just walk in and take a look at work? Do you like have the studios and then do you have like a selling space at the front of the building?
It's actually an open studio space. So we try our best to have an open space, but we've realized that it's better if you book ahead of time or inform us ahead of time of your visits. And then we can have all the artists or most of the artists be present because we we are very aware that the artists have schedules and they have exhibitions coming up. So we try our best to minimize the number of visits. Yeah.
And so
Or
really
use that word.
your the quality of the artists and the faith that collectors and potential buyers have in the artists in Artemartis is because of like a track record that you built up over the years since you opened, and you have it. So that's kind of quite similar to a traditional gallery with a gallerist who has a stable of artists and a certain group of loyal collectors that will come back.
Yeah.
Is it working in some ways like that traditional, more commercial gallery?
Well, we mostly put our efforts into getting exhibitions for the artists and working on collaborative projects or direct projects ourselves, like 154.
Hmm.
The the aim is to have again a good track record and
Hmm.
to ensure that whoever decides to buy from our artists, whether it's from us or through galleries or through any platform where we decide to show the works, is making one, a good investment, two, is really, really in love with what they are purchasing and the story of the artist. Sometimes when collectors decide to contact us directly to buy works, we try to organize Zoom meetings with the artists so they get to know the artist better. Yes. So
So in some ways, yeah, some ways it works like that. And the the I was just thinking about. I'm trying to imagine the kind of the artists, and are the majority of them like quite traditional painters, or are there sculptors or other types of artists working there?
yes, majority of them are painters.
Mhm.
And we have another artist who works with sculpture and also materials. He's called Courage Hunke.
Mhm.
He has a special skill where he combines paper and plastic into one material
Mhm.
by using a heat press machine. He also does a lot of sculpture with paper mache and clay. He's very experimental, and he happens to be our youngest artist as well. Really talented guy. Yeah. And then we have Kweku Yaro, who experiments with fabric and other waste material in his work and
Mhm.
adds paints as well. Yeah.
And I'm just trying to imagine how the business works, how the financial side works. Are you making, are you getting your income, as it were, from selling your own work and feeding that money that you'd saved up into helping these artists? Or do you or do you take like a commission when they sell their work? Or is it more of a kind of collective? Everyone puts the profits back into Artemartis? Maybe you could
Right.
talk about
So yes,
that.
our model is commission based. So thankfully, most of the money running the the company comes from the sale of artworks. I've moved from using my own money in the beginning to running the company with money from sales. So everything that we make, we basically take a commission from the sale of every artwork, and then we reinvest that into the company. So that pays for rent, salaries, supplies, and projects like 154 and all of that. So yeah,
So it's almost like a cooperative, we might call it,
exactly.
where everybody has like a share, including a financial share in the project.
Well, I wouldn't say so, because the part of the commission that goes to the artist is for the artists.
Mm-hmm.
They keep their money, and anything they decide to do with their money is their own personal decision. But what I get from the commission is what I reinvest into the company
I
to
see.
help artists grow. Yes.
Yeah, no, I get it. It is an interesting model. I wondered if you could speak. I'm aware that a lot of our listeners aren't from Africa, haven't visited Africa, but so maybe you could give us some idea of what the art scene in Ghana's like, and maybe how it's developed and changed during your own lifetime, and maybe where you see it going in the future. Because when I speak to people from Accra and Ghana, it sounds
Mhm.
pretty exciting at the moment.
It is. It is. I mean, I I would say I officially joined the Ghanaian art scene as I know it in 2021. That's when I started to meet a lot of people, a lot of players in the scene. And to me, it's been very welcoming. I'm talking from personal experience. I've found myself growing so much and learning so much and developing in character due to the help and the challenges I've faced as well. There isn't only a good side. The bad sides are there for you to learn from and grow. It's very cooperative. There are multiple galleries or spaces like Gallery 1957, other gallery, Nubuke, Dot Ateliers, and there are other non-physical spaces like Sihine. And all these spaces try to help each other so much that whenever there's a visitor or there are a group of visitors from outside Africa or outside the country, they try as much as possible to have them visit every single space. And that is amazing. You don't really find that anywhere. People are
Hmm.
willing to help, people are willing to push you. Whenever you have a show, they'll support, they'll show up. So I'd say that is good. The foundations are being built well. Yeah.
So galleries, although they're independent, they support one another. And if an international collector comes in to Accra and visits, say, Artemartis, you'd say, "Oh, go and have a look at these other galleries now," and they would say they would do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And I just wanted just to come back. I was just going to ask you, so in terms of staffing Artemartis, you don't really need any staff as such. You don't have support staff and like secretarial bureau people to do the bureaucracy. Do you do that all yourself?
So I have a team of, well, including me, I have a team of 3 people.
Mhm.
There's me, creative director. There's Edwin Osuansa, who is the artist manager, and there's Rita, who is our accountant.
Okay.
Yes, as I would call us a starting business because we have been around for almost 7 years. We'll be 7 years in March, but we've been in the international art scene for almost 3 years because we
Mhm.
made our first international break in 2020 with Philips Auction House.
Oh,
So
actually, sorry,
if you run,
there was a little bit of a break then. Can you rewind, as it were, to what you were just saying? You made your international break. Can you hear me?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can
Yes,
now.
I
There was
can
a
hear you clearly.
Can you just start again at where you said you made the international break?
Yes, we made our first international break in February 2022 with Philips
Mm.
Auction House, which was a
Ah,
huge jump from what we were doing before. Exactly. And it's very tempting if you own or when you own a business to hire as many people as you can. But in the initial stages, you have to do all the work. And that is what I find myself doing. I taught myself how to create a website from scratch. I taught myself how to do graphic design, shoot videos, and basically run a business. It's an amazing experience, and I encourage any entrepreneur to really treat your business like a baby or your first baby when you're running it. Yeah,
Very
those moments are very important.
realizing
Yeah,
that a baby is a lot stronger than you think, but also needs a lot of loving
mhm,
care
exactly. And attention. Yeah.
and can be beautiful, but can be very messy. What I was going to ask you is when you spoke about making an international break with Philips, I know I've noticed before that Philips is actually very good, and the way it kind of disrupts the duopoly of Sotheby's Christie's. One of the things it does is I remember it had some of the first urban art sales based on Banksy and the fame, the growing fame in London of London as a street art hub. So it's always kind of quite trendy on that kind of level. Did they did they have a sale of like African artists, or did they have some of your Artemartis artists in being sold on the primary market but at auction is my question.
Yes, so it was a private sale.
Hmm.
Um, I think the target was the primary market, and it was strictly artists from Artemartis who were approached by Flair, who used to work at Philips, and she basically told us about what they were trying to do. It took us about 4 months to prepare for the show,
Hmm.
and the private sale was in their London space. It
Hmm.
lasted for 10 days, and I think we sold out on the third day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I think a lot of my students, of course, have only just come into London, but I remember it well. And it was a. But can you just remind me of the year that
That was
happened?
in 2022.
That's right. So it's just after we come out of COVID, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, when a lot of London galleries were beginning to kind of, do various things. Actually, one of the Ghanaian artists that I knew was or know is Kojo Martha. I don't know if you've heard of him. So he's working in London, but he's from Ghana, and he was part of a COVID competition for like an open competition that the Commercial Gallery in Davis Street in Mayfair in London, JD Mallet, they uh, they put on this open competition where any artist who was resident in the UK during lockdown could put in photos of works, and then a judging panel of which I was one um, could just select 20 artists who then, when the lockdown finished in the summer of that year, I remember it was very moving going back into museums and galleries again. And they had an exhibition of these 20 shortlisted artists, and Kojo was one of them. And uh, he he sold well immediately, and then they put on a solo show, the usual kind of business pattern, if you like. And I wrote a catalogue entry for his work. Ghanaian artists, like a lot of African artists from different nations, we have always, you know what I'm going to say, we've always just talked about African art, and the whole point of 154 as a title for an art fair in London was to say, actually, this is 54 nations, not one. I have the same issue with my Latin American students. When we go to the Venice Biennale this year, I have to say, look, don't talk about LATAM art. There are like 32 nations, like there are 54 in Africa, and they all have their own cultures and their own mythologies, etc. But what I was going to ask is, um, how do you go about networking with the broader African art world? Because I think that you've had networks, including down to South Africa. Could you talk about the way Artemartis works within Africa?
Yes. So unfortunately, most of our exhibitions have been outside Africa, but I've found myself in spaces like Artex Lagos, the um, Investec Art Fair,
Hmm.
and then those opportunities gave me a chance to talk to a lot of people. I'm highly introverted, but when it comes to work, I try my best to talk and network. Social media has also played a huge role, and the major way of networking is word of mouth, the old school method. We've had a lot of collectors visit, a lot of collectors, museum directors, museum owners, gallery owners, and art enthusiasts in general visit our space. And
Mm.
every single time we receive emails of spaces asking to visit, it's mostly because were referred to them by someone who previously visited the space. So that has been the main way of networking. It's almost always by people visiting our space. Yeah.
And a little bit like my student who knows a lot more about African art than I do, saying, "Oh, you should check this one out," you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, referrals.
Did you, Selassie, were you in London for 154 this year? Because I missed you because I only went on the Sunday. But what,
Yes.
maybe you could tell us about that experience of coming, bringing some of your art and to London. And well, the staffing, was that local people based in London, or did you bring the staff with you for the stand?
So one of them is in London. She's based in London, and the second came from France. She's a friend of mine who decided to show support. Yeah.
Nice.
Um, yes. So they've been amazing. Isla and Laura, they made
Hmm.
my work really easy for me. And I'm sure when you got there, it was an amazing experience for you. They made you feel at home and everything.
Oh,
So
definitely. No, definitely. And in fact, to be honest, I found most of the galleries, but when you go to any art, an interesting thing about art fair is as you've said, it's very important to network. So it's a great place to network, obviously, an art fair, because you can just see people from all over the world, or in this case, all over Africa.
yeah.
And some of them are a bit snotty, but most of them are incredibly friendly. And I always tell my students, if someone looks down on you or is not friendly, just make a note of that gallery name and just think they're going to have to kind of come begging one day when I'm as big as they are.
I
But
understand.
you enjoyed the experience. What I was going to ask you, was there a kind of good after party on the opening night? So did the galleries party anywhere?
Yes, they did. They did in Somerset House. They did.
Actually,
I think I
some say,
was yeah, Somerset House. They did something there, but I I found myself hanging out with another group of people. I've had these amazing supporters slash friends, Catherine Finity, Erin Christoval, and Larry Amponsa. They've been really supporting me and trying to introduce me to as many people as they can. And yeah, I went for a few parties here and there. It's very important. I didn't only come for work. So yeah.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And I always think Sunday mornings, although you haven't got the buzz of the opening, I always like going to these art fairs on Sunday mornings because there's no one there. Everyone's probably
That,
hungover before, and
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
nice calm quiet. I remember that's when I used to see Charles Saatchi in the going around art fairs in the earlier millennium. He used to
Oh,
always go when I went on a Sunday morning, and because he's very shy, and he used to
mhm.
see him running around in his raincoat from gallery to gallery. Used to look really weird, and so it just didn't look as though this guy was like a major art collector. But it's a good time to go. And I was going to ask you. Maybe I don't know whether you could give us some examples of artists who've done especially well in Artemartis because of your promotional strategies, or would you like to feel that they're all kind of equal, or have any emerged particularly well from Artemartis?
Yes, I would say so. So currently we have an artist called Kweku Yaro who is doing really amazing right now.
Hmm.
Um, he's found himself working with multiple galleries
Hmm.
and he's done, I think, three solo shows so far. He's done two residencies. He has another one on the way in China with Pearl Lam Galleries.
Hmm.
Um, he's also going to Untitled Miami in December. His works will be showing there by Gallery 1957. So it's really amazing what he's doing. We also have James Michio, who has had two museum shows to his name so far in the past 2 years. And he's doing quite amazing. A lot of collectors who came were really happy to see James Michio's works because most of them were old collectors. They've been following his works for a long time.
Hmm.
And it was great to put a face to the people representing him. So it was really amazing. And to be very honest, I would say all the artists are doing amazing for themselves. For this short period that we've been working together, they have done quite amazing shows. So I'll say they are all on a good track. So yeah.
And would you say that they're equally visible in the art world in, if you like, the museum context, if you like, the more cultural, less financial context, as well as doing quite well commercially. Because our teachers, our students learn that it's very important to get that balance right. You don't just want to sell out by, selling a lot of works, but none of them, no museum curators, for example, would be interested, or no serious shows of art would be interested. Do you find that some of your artists, you did mention a couple of museum representations?
Yeah. So currently with museums, I feel like because our artists are fresh on the market, I still see them as new artists. It's going to take some more time for them to have more and more museum shows. I feel like with museum shows, you have to prove yourself. You have to show that you are very serious. We've had quite a number of museums visit our space. They've interacted with our artists and they seem highly interested in them. It's all about timing. And I definitely know for sure that the right time will come for them to do all of this. Yeah. They
Yeah.
all understand the balance between being commercial and being institutional. So it's all about timing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting theme actually. Another podcast that, funny enough, I recorded this morning, but I think I'm going to publish yours before it. Marek Klassen, who does this database we use called Art Facts, it doesn't deal with money at all. It deals with with attention or fame that artists and galleries uh, get. So it means that if an artist, for example, unknown artist, suddenly is in a group show with a better known artist who's higher up their rankings, because they create rankings based on points, their own ranking is boosted by being attracted by the points of the either the more famous artist or a more famous gallery. So their whole ranking system is not based on money at all, like ArtPrice and ArtNet, the financial ones are. So we try and teach our students to use both, maybe in their dissertation research, to see what the relationship is between an artist who does well in curated galleries, if you like, that aren't so interested in money, and the opposite. And because usually they're one or the other, so that's why I asked you whether most of your artists are painters that are creating art that is commodifiable, that is easily bought and sold and traded, as opposed to Cornelia Parker that does like an installation that is often just destroyed apparently 10 years later when they can't store it and no one wants to buy it, and yet she's become very, very famous in the art world because she's shown in a room in Tate Modern
Mhm. Yeah.
or Tate Britain. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Um, the whole initiative about the ranking system actually makes sense.
Hmm.
It's it's a nice metric actually to evaluate artists. I'll look more into it. I'll ask you for the details after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. And I was going to ask you, have you won any kind of like professional acknowledgements or journalistic acknowledgements or prizes even for Artemartis?
Unfortunately, not yet. Not yet, but I know it will come. It's I'm not really moved by those by prizes or awards or public acknowledgements. I'm very to myself. A lot of people don't even know I'm behind Artemartis, and
Hmm.
I feel like sometimes these prizes or awards may distract you from your goals. Sometimes it's just best to meet your targets, and I think that's an award in itself. So yeah, but I'm not shy. I'm not shy from them at all,
I
honestly.
think I think it's lovely to hear you saying that, Selassie, because I try to get just sorry, I keep coming back to my own experience and my own students, but I try to get them to understand that being over ambitious uh, is not necessarily a good thing. The art world still moves quite slowly, it's still quite organic, and I think you walk before you run. You learn
Exactly.
wisdom. You're not going to go straight into being a successful person in the art world unless you're incredibly lucky. And then you probably won't maintain it. A little bit like artists, if you see these artists
Exactly.
selling for over 1 million and they're only in their 20s and they might be flavor of the month, but until they get represented by an acknowledged public collection, they're going nowhere in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. My to quote my mom, she always advises me to treat my business like a car. If you
Mm.
are driving fast and you see a pothole and you run into it, the chances of your car or you getting severely damaged is high. But
Mm.
when you drive slowly and you even hit a pothole, you will not get as much damage as you would if you were going fast. You can even see everything coming ahead of you and then dodge it right in time. So that's my method. Yeah.
That's a very good metaphor, actually. Yeah, I actually got done a few months ago for going over. We now have a lot of 20 miles an hour speed limits in London
I
because
saw.
they've
Yeah.
proven that if you run into a child and you're doing 20 miles an hour and can brake, that the child might be hurt but not badly damaged, whereas you can kill them going even at 23. You know, it's but I was I got I'm very careful, but I didn't even realize that I was going over 20 and it got me. And you have to do these awful 3 hour long Zoom sessions with other embarrassed people. And, they keep telling you off if they see someone, no one else is allowed in the room. If they think that you're looking at your smartphone, they tell you off and say, I'm gonna send you out the room unless you, it's very strict. But I
It's
think,
like
right,
it's like
I love
detention for adults. Yeah.
yeah, but it also works when you're going over potholes, I notice. It doesn't bang you
Mhm.
nearly so much.
That's
That's a very good metaphor. The what I was going to say is a bigger question. Maybe where do you see the African art world's position in the larger socio-economic world today? And where do you see it going in the next few years? Because there is a view that Africa has suddenly got into the news through the Floyd uh, incident and the Black Lives Matter that grew exponentially and surprisingly, in my view, out of that. I mean, I hope it's not, just a flash in the pan, but I mean, from my experience, I don't think it is. I think that there's enough infrastructure there and enough good artists that, as you say, are now being absorbed internationally and respected internationally, for it to have now taken root. But I just wondered what your views were on that, on the future of African artists in the international art world.
so in 2020 or 2021, there was the spike in attention and demand. And I remember being at my job and reading all these things. And I always had it in mind that things like this will not last forever. It will get to a point where it will plateau.
Mhm.
And when that happens, it's only those who have built a strong foundation or have a certain mindset who will be able to sustain themselves until the next spike. So I believe that we are currently at a point where the attention has plateaued in a way. All the artists who have gained attention over the years, who have been able to position themselves well, are still standing. I am very grateful that Artemartis has been able to ride on some of the wave and then push itself to this level where we are highly recognized by a lot of galleries, because 154 showed me that there are so many people who actually know Artemartis and about what we've done that I wasn't even aware of. um Gallery 1957 literally hosted a cultural week, and we had so many people visiting our space. I wish I was there, but I was still happy because my colleague Edwin handled it perfectly. We had visitors from really huge galleries that I cannot name now, who really loved what we were doing and have been following us for the past 2 to 3 years. I am very optimistic about Africa's position in the global art scene because, just like myself, there are so many people in other countries who are also building foundations. And I fully believe that because of the availability of information and knowledge and the access to the outside world and networking, it all depends on how far you're willing to carry yourself. I don't think anything is too big for Africa or what we have to offer. In a few years, I see us making great stands and great moves in the global market. I'm very optimistic about it. Yeah.
And do you think one of the questions people often ask is, should we even be talking about artists of different nationalities, or are artists now nomadic? And don't, many artists, when they're interviewed, they say, I don't see myself as African or English or a New Yorker. But at the same time, the world likes to categorize and talk about, oh, I've just bought work by an African artist. It has its own catch to it, I think. I don't know what you think about that, or whether you think all artists should be just treated the same as artists primarily, and then whatever nation they are is secondary to that.
I feel like it's human nature for us to peg or to basically categorize people for identity purposes. But artists are very expressive, and some of them don't like to be categorized or boxed in. So I feel like with them, it's for their own personal reason, and it's also a way of expression for them. Every industry has its set of trends, and it also helps when people decide to speak about, I bought art from an African artist. It helps with the business, it helps with the trend, it helps with everything. It helps with everything. I am someone who has a very open mind. I like to take everything in, and then I filter what doesn't work for me. For this particular topic, I feel like we should leave everyone to basically express themselves however they seem fit, so long as it's respectful. So yeah.
I think that last word you've used is so important. It mustn't be patronizing. You mustn't just single out people because they're a young emerging woman or they have a certain sexuality or by
That's
the color of their skin. I think the primary thing should be to treat one another, everybody with respect.
exactly respect. Very
That's
important.
that's what I hope that we can teach our students anyway. And I was kind of coming to the end now. I was just going to say many of the listeners to this podcast I know are just starting a career in the art world. I wonder if there's any kind of special piece of advice of your own that you might have for them.
Yes, I do. I have a few actually. The first one is to have patience.
Hmm.
Patience is a virtue. It's one of the most important things you should have as a human being. Without patience, you will miss out on a lot of things. You will miss out on the process that gets you to where you want to be. And also, I would also emphasize on um people and their relationship with money or their mindsets about money. We've seen a lot of artists who have seen money, they've been getting a lot of attention, and money changes you, whether you like it or not, it will change you. So I truly, truly believe that everyone should try and educate themselves about money and have proper conversations about money. Because a lot of people, especially in the African art scene, did not grow up with good conversations around money. So when they find themselves in a certain space where they are making a lot of money, they feel like it will last forever. But it takes a lot to maintain money. So that is very important. A third thing is humility. I mean, humility and respect. Just respect everyone you work with. If someone you're working with doesn't treat you well, you can always walk away. This world is full of multiple opportunities. I found myself learning how to say no to a lot of people and opportunities because of what I believe in and where I see myself going or where I see the company going. So I will definitely encourage a lot of people or everyone to say no a lot. It's really helpful. So yeah,
It's
I
very
think
strong.
that's
It's very strong, and as you say, so long as you're respectful in the way you say that,
yeah.
people respect you more actually if you're strong. Don't always say yes to every offer, say of money or whatever. It's like, what's the biblical statement? Store up your treasures in heaven, not on earth.
Yeah.
There's lots of that. That's wonderful. And Selassie, thank you for not saying no when I reached out to see whether you would go podcast. I'm really flattered by that, actually, given that you obviously say no to a lot of people.
To be very honest, as soon as I was actually a freeze when you came in because I knew Sunday was a slower day as compared to the other day. So I took the opportunity to go to freeze to network and talk to people. So as soon as
Yeah.
I got and I found out that you were there, I just sent an email immediately.
Oh,
So
thank you.
yes.
Well,
You're
as I say,
welcome.
we're now, I've got some great students now, from Africa or from an African background, and it's just tremendous that, again, I don't want to sound patronizing, but it's just love to me, to be honest.
Yeah,
I just love having international students, but, these are people that have been, to be honest, underrepresented in the art world in the past. So hopefully these people will grow up and become big parts of this diverse art world, if you like. I
so
sound
I
like I suddenly sound like a politician, don't
I
I?
really hope so, honestly. I'm a very optimistic person, so I'm
Yeah.
all for good energy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I hope to meet you one day, Selassie, when you're over in London. Just get in touch and we'll have a coffee somewhere. And maybe I could introduce you to some of my students as well.
I'd love that. Even if there's an opportunity for me to talk to the artists next year, I think I
Yeah,
can do much. So we can arrange something.
that would be great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
down at 150
I'd love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love
Anyway,
to.
on behalf of all the listeners, Selassie, thank you for giving us this fascinating window into Accra, Ghana, and your Artemartis, and long may it prosper.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity. It was really nice talking to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.